direct conflict with them. And Russia will never be the same after this conflict. I mean, make no mistake, between their birth rate and their immigration policies, they didn't have the luxury to lose soldiers. They are in trouble. They have a demographic problem, and this only makes their demographic problem worse. And so, again, depending on what our goal is, we might be achieving it.
Hey, I agree with what you said, Roger. Like, I voted they should give up land, but I don't. Only reason I vote that way because I don't think Trump will give them the support that they need or they deserve. But I feel like the U.S. basically baited them into the situation. Not to say Trump, but the U.S. in general. So I think the U.S. should give them what they need to finish it off. Because people are saying like Ukraine is small and things like that, but Russia is not. This is no picnic for Russia. They're losing shit tons of soldiers. Their economy is not doing great. So they're not in no great position themselves. So, but I don't think Trump, for the reason that they're not in a great position, I think that's why Trump is not going to help Ukraine. I believe that he supports Russia.
Wait, did I just hear you say give them what they want? I can't. Is that what you said?
You do what they want. I'll tell a lot of stuff. What part?
If you don't remember, that's fine.
No, Ken, what part you confused about? I'll do that.
I know I wasn't confused. I heard what you said.
I'm saying, you what you want. I said, I don't remember exactly every word I was saying. So,
okay, then that's okay.
So, can I disagree with you, Captain? Sir, I have some issues with Putin saying, like, the idea that he's going to march into Kiev. I'm confused from the start of the battle plan. Like, he employed Hannibal's old tactics of, like, the try whatever you call it, going around each side. But unfortunately, he never carpet bombed anything, and we're aware that they could have done it. He didn't destroy water supplies. He didn't destroy necessarily oil reserves. He didn't really interfere with electrical areas, and he left the western corridors open in Ukraine. This has always been puzzling to me because it just seemed like a ploy to have Ukraine just kind of sue for peace quickly, but it may have been just part of Putin's grand plan, knowing that the U.S. was going to provide aid, Europe was going to provide some financial assistance, and that this was going to be a war of attrition. Because when he actually set his lines, he parked them very distinctly and very permanently right now over those heavily rich reserve areas and his port areas that he wanted, access to the seas. This has always bothered me in war because the first thing you would do would be to cut off supplies. You would try to cut off lifelines, so you would prevent the funneling of supplies coming in. And Putin never did that. I don't know if it's a lack of their capabilities, but even basic military education would tell you to take that off. I don't think Putin really wants all of Ukraine. In all fairness, I think what he wants is just the section that's going to be rich, and he does not want the U.S. to be or any Western alliance to be in control over those areas, and he doesn't want the access to the sea ports, the deep water ports, to be hindered by anybody, particularly Ukraine, who's vying to join alliances with Europe and the U.S., make broader trade agreements. And the only reason I say this is like when Kazakhstan, when the U.S. started to make inroads there for trade agreements, Russia came in, and even with China trying to go toe-to-toe with the U.S. for agreements, Russia came in and squashed all of that. And so that nation lost the opportunities to trade with the U.S., Western alliances, and Eastern ones. So I think it's more about economics and the potential for the money for Russia. And I think that's what Putin's really, truly focused on. I said this at the start of the war, and it so far has played out how I thought it would go. But it's always been mind-numbing to me that for the people that believe he would march all the way there to Kiev, like if that was the case, he could have easily taken Kiev. He didn't have to hold pulled back, and he could have cut off the airdrops. He could have cut off even the western routes that brought supplies in, and he could have cut off the energy and water sections, and he never did. I don't know if he's just dumb. Also, Putin's like, what, 75 years old? He is technically going to be dead soon. Like, let's call it what it is. I mean, unless there's some miracle cure in Russia that keeps guys, forever 150 years old. I mean, he is getting older. He is going to be prone to infirmities that affect old age. He's going to be prone to sicknesses. At some point, the man is going to die and have to relinquish power. I doubt he makes it to 2030, but we can see. I mean, he could be 80 years old. It's not unheard of, but I just don't see him retaining power that long.
I just think he wants a legacy. He wants a baby dynasty. Hopefully he goes through that.
So, how did you vote, Brad? Are you saying don't give an inch and continue the war with the expectation that we can wear Russia down and drive them back to pre-2014 boundaries? Is that what you're suggesting is the best route to go?
No, I'm saying that they should accept the agreement on the table and try to rebuild. Zelensky has not fortified his infrastructure to a military footprint that is needed to win this war. It just has not.
Okay, I tend to agree with that. But the poll doesn't allow me to do it because let's say that the war stops and the current battle lines are an armistice line, and both sides agree that they're not going to try to advance across the current lines. But a peace treaty will not be signed by Ukraine until Russia cedes all the land that Ukraine claims. In other words, do we go now for a Korean War situation? And if so, who is going to man those battle lines or be held in reserve with massive power to prevent a resurgence by Russia a year, 2 years, 5 years from now to restart the war? In other words, is it going to be American troops sitting somewhere encamped along the Dnieper River or somewhere in western Ukraine? Or is it going to be NATO troops? In other words, is a Korean War situation something that we should hope to achieve now in order to stop the war and stop the killing, but not signing a peace treaty that would legally de jure. In other words, Russia gets the current land de facto, but they're not allowed to get it de jure in accordance with a peace treaty that Ukraine would sign with Russia. And would Putin even agree to such an armistice without a de jure secession of some land on the part of Ukraine? Again, it's a tough nut to crack.
I mean, I'm not saying Zelensky should just give away the driveway and the garage and without receiving anything in return. I think Zelensky could ask for a NATO base directly in Ukraine. It could be one of his precursors. Whether or not the powers that be will agree to that seems to be more on the table. And if I was Zelensky, I would be asking for that. I would say, hey, this is what my nation needs. Here's what we need as people. I need trade agreements for grain, production and manufacturing. Here, I want these also on the table with this. And then I want the assurances in a treaty stating that if Russia breaks these lines, then you are going to definitely put boots on the ground. I'm not saying we should put boots on the ground, but this would be me as Zelensky saying, hey, I want NATO here, and in case they break that, I want you to go toe-to-toe with us to repel Russia. And if they violate this peace treaty, we're going all the way. We are not holding back. We're not holding this into our territory. We will attack all the way to Moscow. And I would put that clearly on the table and say, here, this is the agreement we'll reach to. I would put the NATO nations in a corner. That's just me playing Zelensky, though.
That's you playing Zelensky, but I don't think Putin would even dream of signing an armistice that would allow NATO troops to enter Ukraine and be prepared for military action. That's almost the equivalent of allowing Ukraine to join NATO. And from everything I know about Russia, not just Putin, but Russia, they wouldn't even come close to agreeing to an armistice, a cessation, stop shooting at each other, if the prospect is going to be a de facto NATO presence in Ukraine, much less a Ukraine membership in NATO. Putin would just keep on fighting. Russia would just keep on fighting if that was proposed by, say, Trump or the United States or even NATO on Friday. Do you agree with that?
I agree that Putin wouldn't take it, but then we're forgetting about one big thing with the Russian people, because they're not immune to this, would be the optic war, that all of a sudden there's a chance for peace. Would Putin start to receive pushback from his own people, particularly the military, at the numbers he's losing, the number that are wounded, and the numbers that are returning? Would he end up being forced to accept something along these lines? Because again, the Russian people also want peace. They're tired of the war too. So, I mean, it would be like boxing Putin into a corner. And Zelensky could come out looking like a hero. Putin can come out looking like a hero temporarily. And the U.S. and NATO looks like they fulfilled their obligations at some point. So, I mean, if I was Zelensky, I'd be playing hardball. I would put everybody in a corner, and I would put them all in a box and say, here, this is what we're going to agree to. Because right now, he has nothing to lose. It's either the war keeps fighting, he loses more territory, or, he accepts terms of a peace agreement, and Putin's gotta obey at least somewhat the will of his own people.
Well, this has devolved into Anson and Brad, two military guys, discussion back and forth. And
let's throw one more in there then. How you guys doing? Ironically, Anson, I have a personal question. You wouldn't happen to be a descendant of Anson Burlingame, the minister to China under Lincoln, would you? If so, that would be pretty awesome. I think that I've listened to the conversation.
I have a picture that was taken last fall in Faneuil Hall in Boston, and it shows a big picture of that Anson Burlingame that was during the Lincoln administration of the Civil War, and me at age 82 in front of that picture.
I might have missed it. So are you a descendant of his?
Yes, I am. Not a direct. He branched off, so he and I were great cousins or something like that.
Oh, well, that's pretty interesting. To this point of the conversation, I think that a lot of people forget something, right? And that's that Putin is an old KGB guy, right? And he mainly controls government and all kinds of other levers in the country of Russia. And what I mean by that is that it is an optical war for him. If he could come out of this looking like or phrasing the argument in front of his people that, hey, I won or I got something or I bested them, I think he's willing to do whatever. I think both men, Putin and Zelensky, they are leaders, right? They're willing to lose people. They're willing to send men to die. And they will sleep like babies about it. I think that who has the capacity to withstand longer is a good question. Ukraine has obviously got some backers, right? It's almost a proxy war with us and things like that. But Ukraine should hold out as long as they possibly can. Any nation should. But there's precedent for this, right? Crimea, they held out for long as they could, and they still were annexed by Russia. And so maybe it might be time to cut a deal, right? So Putin's not